Hey guys, good morning. I had pushed this show back a couple times, but now I want to do this show because this is very, very important. There's been so much going on in the world since the events of a few days ago. At this point, I believe that we just need to have compassion for the people that were deceived and drag them out from under the bus after Trump's announcements about going after the people that showed up to his rally. And I'm hoping this will be the catalyst for people to finally wake up, but at this point it really doesn't matter. What happened, happened. And over the last several years, as we were been warning people not to ever have this VC ever made, now we're at the point where it's hindsight. But it wasn't for lack of trying. But I think now some of the people that supported him, we're going to start calling him Mr. T, because now the very name, his very name being spoken on YouTube is being censored. So all the people that he told to go out there are now in jeopardy of charges of sedition. And maybe that will be what they need to wake up. But again, it's too late, because the damage is already done. So we're going to have a full show on that. And we're going to go about this a different way. I really feel like we should reach out to those people who have been deceived because they have nowhere to go. And they're just going to stew in their betrayal. You guys, I've been getting emails, 5 emails a day from Trump. And I'm going to, Mr. T, we're going to call him. I'm going to show those to you in the show that we do. I'm going to show you how he has been beating the drum of that date over and over again in the verbiage and language that he was saying that was inciting people to not only just show up, but to also go a step above and beyond for the small percentage of the people that showed up there, probably stoked by some provocateurs. So I'm going to show you those emails so you can see how he tricked everybody. And he was basically telling them to do exactly what they did in these emails, in the language. It's really unbelievable to me that anybody can still, at this point, run cover. It's just baffling. So let's get into today's show. This was very troubling for me, and I felt it deserved its own show. Now, here it is here. Wasn't aware of this before. But before a child ever gets out of the womb, there is a scheduled VC already given to them at 27 weeks. Here's one of the side effects of a different VC. This one is not given at birth, but look at this: lowered consciousness. Same material given to them at birth. What is it? It's called the DTP-VC. And what this is for diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. Now, why they would give this, I was trying to wrap my brain around this, and that's what we're going to discuss today, is why is this given in the womb? This is one of the only VCs given in the womb. The other one is the flu shot. Now, let's take a look at what's inside this. This is from the CDC. This is it right here. Tdap is the name of the specific VC given in the womb. Sanofi Pasteur. It contains aluminum phosphate, 0.33 milligrams, as the adjuvant. It's also got formaldehyde and residual glutaraldehyde, which is kind of like formaldehyde. So these are the ingredients inside this specific VC given at 27 weeks. while the child is still in the womb. Now, we're going to look at some of these ingredients inside of Tdap, and then you can decide what all this means. I'm just going to present to you some articles about aluminum, articles about formaldehyde, and glutaraldehyde. I guess it's hard to say. I'm just going to call it G-hide. No, we can't call it that because it sounds too much like another word. So, here's what concerns me about these ingredients. We're going to look at aluminum specifically. Now, when you look at fetal development, a boy's sexual organs begin to come down at 7, or not come down, but they begin to develop at 7 to 12 weeks. But their testes to the ickles, we're going to call them, don't come down until about the week that this VC is given. Now, this interests me because what is really going on here? Here's the proof here. Begin descending at week 26. It's about the same week that they give this VC that contains aluminum in it. Now follow me on this because this is where we're headed. We're going to talk about aluminum first. And then there's this study in rats. And it says here that the body weight of rat pups treated with 100 milligrams per day of aluminum was decreased relative to controls from postnatal day 12 through 21. Sexual maturation was delayed in aluminum-treated females and in males exposed to 100 milligrams per kilogram per day. Now, that sounds like a lot of aluminum compared to what's in the VC. The difference is, in this study, this was given orally inside of drinking water, whereas the VC is given systemically inside of the bloodstream. Huge difference. Now, what else do we have about aluminum? Well, there were Gulf vets, and they had aluminum injected into their bloodstreams, and they were shown to have problems. Let me get to that study. Where'd it go? I think it's this one here. Here we go. So this particular study, let's scroll up here, is called Aluminum Hydroxide Injections Lead to Motor Deficits and Motor Neuron Degeneration. So, starts out here, GWS, Gulf syndrome, is a multi-system disorder afflicting many vets of Western armies in the 1990-91 Gulf. A number of those afflicted may show neurological deficits, including various cognitive dysfunctions and motor neuron disease. The latter expression virtually indistinguishable from classical amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, except for the age of onset. This ALS cluster represents the second such ALS cluster described in literature today. So there was this ALS cluster. Now, let's keep reading. Possible causes of Gulf syndrome include several of the adjuvants in the anthrax, VC, and others. The most likely culprit appears to be aluminum. In an initial series of experiments, we examined the potential toxicity of aluminum in mice, injected subcutaneously in 2 equivalent to human doses. After sacrifice, which is a weird word to use in a study, spinal cord and motor cortex samples were examined. Aluminum mice and aluminum-treated mice showed significantly increased apoptosis of motor neurons, basically the destruction of their neurological system. The nerve damage. And this spilled over into the spinal cord. So, the demonstrated neurotoxicity of aluminum hydroxide and its relative ubiquity as an adjuvant, which means it's used everywhere as an adjuvant. Ubiquity means everywhere. As an additive, suggests that greater scrutiny by the scientific community is warranted. Now, as you know, I've made no claims in this video yet, and I won't. I'm simply presenting you the information. Now, aluminum also has been identified as one of the probable substances that cause Alzheimer's. Now, I'm not going to dig into this research because there's a lot of research out there on Alzheimer's and metals in the body. And a lot of that is just in the food. It's not even in the bloodstream. So, remember, the bloodstream has no barriers to it in terms of it goes right into your body, right into the organs. Whereas if you eat something, it's called a second pass effect. It doesn't really go straight into your bloodstream. There are barriers so that it doesn't sit in your body. So, this is what's going on. Now, there's more about how this affects children in the womb. Let's get back to that study. Now, I'll pin all these studies in the comment section. But this particular article, called Perinatal Toxicity of Aluminum. Potential noxious substances may act as fetal teratogens at levels far lower than those required, producing detectable effects in adults. So right here, they're talking about how aluminum affects the child in the womb much more quickly and at much lower doses than it does adults. Aluminum is a potential neurotoxin in adults and is well accepted as capable of inducing neurobehavioral deficit even without altering the morphology. Due to the lower bioavailability, the reproductive toxicity of aluminum is rarely assessed. Only in the 1990s, aluminum is paid attention on its reproductive toxicity. And it took nearly the end of the last century to concern about embryo-fetal consequences of aluminum ingestion. Since pregnant women may be exposed to untoward levels of aluminum under certain conditions, therefore aluminum toxicity may be a particular concern to the developing fetus. Very few studies on humans are available in this regard. Why is that? When you have a ubiquitous or commonly used adjuvant to these VCs, and you know that these heavy metals can cause problems, why wouldn't you have studies on that? At the perinatal age, aluminum is highly neurotoxic and inhibits prenatal and postnatal brain development. You guys see where this is headed? Brain development. In addition, maternal dietary exposure to excess aluminum during gestation and lactation, which did not produce maternal toxicity, would be capable of causing permanent neurobehavioral deficits in weanling mice and rats. Over and above of these facts, the root and chemical form of aluminum exposure are two important determinants of the impacts of aluminum at this crucial age of neural development. So what this article is saying is that small amounts of aluminum, which they haven't even had many studies on, have caused problems with rats and mice. Why wouldn't they do human studies on this? Now, what else do we have here? Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not making any claims that aluminum in this Tdap VC given in the womb at 27 weeks. I'm not making any claims that this causes any of these side effects, because it's never been studied. Interesting, right? Something that's in everything, in all of these VCs, but they've never done a study on humans to see what effect that it could have. But I can tell you what aluminum toxicity has done in all of these other situations. And I just showed that to you, both intravenously and orally, as we read. And this is just chilling. So, what else do we have here? Make sure we covered everything for today. Now, let's skip over to this other ingredient that we saw. Glutaraldehyde. This was another ingredient in the VC given prenatally. And look at this. They call this a toxic ingredient. Let's go down here. Sold under the brand name Sidex and glutarol. It's a disinfectant, medication preservative, and fixative. As a disinfectant, it is used to sterilize surgical equipment, instruments, and other areas of hospitals. As a medication, it is used to treat warts on the bottom of the feet. Side effects include skin irritation. This is being injected into the bloodstream. If exposed to large amounts, you'll get nausea, headache, shortness of breath. Protective equipment is recommended when used, especially in high concentration. It's effective against a range of microorganisms, including spores. They actually used it for tanning leather, as you can see here. So, this is what's going on. This is what's being injected. Now, if we go back here, I wanted to dig into this article a little bit more, because this is important. Tetanus toxoid, reduced diphtheria, Tdap VC. Here are the two VCs that are given as a scheduled treatment to pregnant women at 27 weeks. I wanted to make sure you understood that. Now, if you were offered this at 27 weeks in your pregnancy, please chime in. Let us know. It's also interesting to note that there are VCs that they say you should avoid during pregnancy. Well, if these were all considered safe, why should you have to avoid some of these? Right? Now, where did it go? I wanted to get back into some of this article, fetal development and your baby's sex. Hormone exposure Chemical exposure. This article is titled Fetal Development, Your Baby's Sex, What to Expect. So lots of women come to this site to figure out what to expect. And let's go to this part here. This is important. Hormone exposure and fetal sex development. While your baby's chromosomes determine his or her sex, medications containing hormones can affect fetal sex development. In particular, spironolactone, high blood pressure meds that reduce testosterone. So be sure to talk to your doctor about any medications you're taking. Some of these medications disrupt the hormones of your child. Now, the peak of testosterone for developing boys after the 7-week mark happens between 7 and 12 weeks. Then it begins to taper off down to prepubescent levels. So this would be the time that you would not want anything competing for the testosterone in your blood while your boy is developing in the womb. Hormone disrupting chemicals in sex development. BPAs, of course, these are those plastics. Cosmetics, soaps, toothpaste. Doesn't toothpaste have aluminum in it? Anything labeled antimicrobial. What are we running around doing right now? Disinfecting everything, aren't we? Well, this can possibly, exposure to this could possibly cause hormone disrupting chemicals, which act as estrogen and can affect your baby's development, including development of sex organs. High levels of exposure, which we're all being exposed to right now, are we not? Antimicrobial, because everybody's freaked out. Do you understand what's happening here? High levels of exposure may increase a boy's risk of hypospadias, where the P word doesn't completely close. In other words, dual sex organs, undescended testes. Exposure to what's known as phytoestrogens in your diet, most often from animals treated with hormones, can also affect fetal sex development. So it talks about buying the proper plastics, and if you can, meat and dairy products from animals that aren't treated with hormones. Buy organic. Now, unfortunately, because a lot of people lost their jobs during the lockdown and food prices have gone through the roof, it's very expensive to buy these organic items when you're pregnant. Once again, the middle class is thrown under the bus. So, they talk about intersex. It says very rare. 1 in 2,000 births is very rare now. 1 in 2,000 people that you walk down the street and see are intersex. And now you know why and how there has been this surge of this kind of thing happening and wanting to be accepted. Seems to me to be orchestrated. Seems to me that there is a cause behind this. This is the other side of the, what is the word I should use for this? The train. This is the other side of the train and what is going on with this in terms of gender. And we have to be sensitive to this because a lot of people are born this way with both sexes. Now, God's going to fix all this eventually when he comes back, but this happened to these children, I believe. It happened to them. And when you see stuff like this, it really breaks your heart. Now, I'm wondering if this is trending up. Like, what were the cases of intersex children, going back decades? My guess is, I don't know this, but my guess is that it may be trending up. In other words, it's more frequent. Because 1 in 2,000 to me sounds like a lot. I would have guessed 1 in a million, 1 in 500,000 maybe, but not 1 in 2,000 births. That is crazy. There are some high schools with 2,000 kids. So one of those is intersex. If this happens, the baby may be born appearing to be female on the outside with mostly male anatomy on the inside, or with genitals that are a mix of male and female types. A girl born with a very large that word, or a boy with a very small P word. NIPT and other prenatal testing can detect this condition in utero. Now, many of these children born this way, they'll do surgeries on them. But what if they get the surgery wrong? So, that's what I wanted to cover with you guys today. This needed to be covered. Long time coming. It's hard to cover this kind of stuff because there's so many, this is a big deal for some people. And this shows how ruthless the enemy is. That he could possibly affect some, a soul before they've even had a chance to come to this world. There's some mechanism behind this. Now, I put out some information as to what my thoughts are about what it could possibly be, but you're going to have to make your own decision on that. There could be other factors, just like we talked about, the external factors as well. But the most profound would be something injected in the blood. That would be the most profound effect, as it bypasses everything. So let's go into the chat here. Unbelievable. It is very evil. Now, were there any memos that went out by the C to the D to the C about what these antimicrobials could do to pregnant women? Did you guys get any warnings? I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything on antimicrobials interfering with hormones for pregnant women. You would think there would be a memo saying, hey, if you're pregnant, look, I know we're supposed to, have these antimicrobials and all this, and these antimicrobial wipes and antimicrobial soaps, but if you're pregnant, you might want to stay away from all that. Right? But we have no guidance from them whatsoever. It's like they want it to happen. It's like they want it to happen. What can we do about this? We're doing it, Tam Tam. This is it. If videos like this can be seen by 1 million people, then you're doing something. Look, they've got us stuck at 666 viewers. They do not like this information. If you're watching this video and you can get this information out to as many people as possible, you're doing something. Because you've now saved a life. Because one mother who sees this might forego that VC. Right? This is why Brandy Vaughn's message was so important. This is probably why they had to take her out, because what she was saying was actually saving lives. She wasn't just running her mouth and angry and calling everybody a shill. She had actionable information. She was putting up dozens of billboards all over America with her own money and her foundation money to help raise the alarm. She even foreshadowed what we're going through right now. And still, there are big channels out there trying to say that she was just a paranoid mother. So sad. So, this is what we need to do with this. The word needs to get out. We're doing it. Your information is all that matters at this point of the game. Don't waste your time showing up to a Capitol building. All that got ruined for us a couple days ago. Protesters will no longer probably be allowed, or they'll be very closely scrutinized. They'll bring to bear NSA, facial recognition, and everything else. You're basically going to set yourself up just like Trump set up his followers, is what's going to happen. So, I don't know how long this video will be up, but I try to be careful the way I said things, and so this should be shareable, and you should be able to download this and upload it on your channel if you want to get the word out, because I just showed you studies. And again, I'll link those in the pinned comment. Let's go in here. Some choose ignorance, but at least we tried. At least you put the information in front of them. Nothing I said in this video was in any information that was false. If people choose to watch it, they do. If they don't, that's on them. We got to put the rest in God's hands. We've done what we were supposed to do. So, it's a little unsettling that so few people showed up to the show today for this kind of information. To me, this is the most important kind of information on this channel. But it is what it is. Again, you put it in God's hands, and He'll do the rest. Okay, let's go back in here. I never rule out YouTube trying to mess with us, because this is what they do. They don't send the word out that we're live, but everybody should know by now that we go live every single day. So I think a lot of people just don't want to tune in to this kind of information because it's unsettling. But we need to face this stuff. We need to face it down. All right. Yes, cast all your cares on Jesus. His burden is light. Now, someone asked me, why all the suffering in the world if our burdens are supposed to be light when we cast them on Jesus? Well, very few people actually follow Jesus' example and do what he said to do. Many of us are invested in the stock market. Would Jesus be invested in the stock market? Absolutely not. So when you lose everything, yes, your burden becomes heavy because you're not casting your burden on Jesus. Jesus didn't really own anything. But yet, a lot of us own a lot of stuff. And so when we lose it all, well, then our burden becomes heavy. Jesus had a skill that he could work with his hands that was in demand. Yet, many of us have jobs that are not based in that. They're based in the whims of a corporation, whether they want to lay you off or not. And so when we lose our jobs over and over again, our burden feels heavy instead of light. Jesus walked around the countryside. He didn't like to be inside big cities. But yet when we're in a big city and our burden becomes too heavy, we complain. Do you see how if we just follow his example, then our burden does become light? So, I'll leave you guys with that. And hopefully the word gets out on this. Be saved if you haven't already, and we'll be back here tomorrow.